Hello, friends. Today, let's talk about how great managers communicate for great results. If you're a manager, it's probably your ambition to lead your team well so that you can get great results. When you get great results, this creates really good morale for your team. This is how your business will thrive. And really, this is how you can get ahead in your career. And one of the skill sets that you need to develop if you want to get great results for your business is your communication skill. Great managers communicate well so that their teams perform well, so that great results happen, so that the business thrives. Today, I want to give you 3 ways that you can communicate well to your team in order to get great results. And I hope that this content is very helpful to you. And if it is, I hope that you'll hit that like button. And if you want to subscribe to Leadership Evolution so that you're notified whenever content like this comes out, that would be very, very helpful. And I thank you in advance. So let's talk about 3 ways that you can sharpen your communication skills so that you can be the best manager that you can be. Number 1, your staff wants direction, not criticism. So emphasize what you want rather than what you don't want. Now, most of us are really good at noticing what's wrong and have the ability to describe that in great detail. You sit down with one of your employees in a feedback cycle, and it's real easy to slip into the trap of describing everything that's wrong. You show up late. You never call in when you're going to be late. You're late coming back from lunch. You never do this. You always do that. And we have a tendency to criticize what we notice is wrong. Now, noticing what's wrong is part of a human being's survival instinct because way back in the day, we needed it to survive. If something's wrong, that threatened our existence, and so we had to respond accordingly. The problem is today, we don't really need to notice what's wrong in order for us to survive. And as a manager, you should know that describing what is wrong never solved the problem and never achieved the result. Great managers understand what is wrong, but they know what they want. And their communication to their staff reflects that. So back to the example where you're sitting down with an employee and you're giving them feedback about the problem they have with being late and they're never on time. A great manager understands what's wrong, but is able to communicate exactly what they want. So it might go something like this. Renee, you need to be at your station working when you're scheduled to be working. If at any time you can't be there when you're supposed to be there, you need to let me know as soon as you know. Do you see how what I just did there, I described what I want instead of describing what's wrong? So understand what's wrong, but know what you want. And when you communicate to your staff in this way, it points their energy and the conversation towards something that's constructive, towards something that's going to solve the problem. When you constantly describe what's wrong and you constantly criticize somebody for what they're doing wrong, all of your energy and all of their energy is going to be pointed in that direction. You're either going to try to avoid something or you're going to try to explain something and rationalize something. And all of your energy now is consumed in trying to fix something that's wrong. Can you see the difference? Where when you say what you want, you're pointing your employee and your energy towards something that's constructive, towards something that will solve a business problem. So this is what great managers do. They understand what's wrong, but they point everyone's energy, they point the conversation, they point the emphasis toward what they want. And so great managers know what they want and they're able to articulate that in a very succinct manner. Number 2, the second way that you can sharpen your communication skills as a manager in order to achieve great results is to understand that your people want to feel important and they want to feel like they're equals. So rather than issuing commands, try to create agreements. Here's the problem. You're the boss. You're the manager, right? And so you might think that, hey, I told them what to do, and so they should be able to go out and execute it because I said so. And then when things get done, you rationalize it by saying, hey, I told them to do it. That's on them. They just didn't do it. It's not my responsibility anymore. I told them what to do. And so when you issue a command to one of your employees, you miss out on a couple of opportunities. The first opportunity that you miss out on is their internal no. You might tell someone to do something, and internally they may be resisting. And they may be saying, you know what, I have no intention of doing that. I don't want to do that. It doesn't make sense to do that. You're telling me to do that, and I'm nodding my head. I'm giving you the corporate nod, but internally, I don't want to do that. Great managers are able to connect with their employees in such a way that you're able to pull out of somebody any internal no that they may have so that you can deal with that internal no right now rather than later. Listen, if somebody doesn't want to do something, they're either going to do a half-assed job at it, if it gets done at all, or they're not going to do it in the first place. In either case, that project is in jeopardy. Another thing that you can miss by issuing a command to someone are any valid obstacles that will keep the project from getting done. The person that you're talking to may understand something that you don't, and they may know of some reason why what you're asking can't be done. But they're afraid to say it in the moment because you're telling them what to do. You're issuing a command. And most people don't want to stand up to their boss. And so by issuing the command, you're missing out on the dialogue that can take place between two people where you understand more of what the employee is going through and what they've experienced and what they know to be the obstacles of the project. A great manager is able to communicate in the moment so that these obstacles are talked about now rather than later. If you talk about them now, there are things that you can collaborate about and solve. But if you talk about these obstacles later, like after the deadline has passed, these obstacles become the excuses for why the project was never done in the first place. And so a great manager will always try to forge an agreement rather than issue a command. And here's what an agreement looks like. An agreement is when everyone is clear about who will do what by when. And remember, an agreement is a two-way street. You're asking the person to be willing to agree to something, to commit to something. And you're getting them to nod their head and say, yes, I will do that by that deadline. When you can form an agreement like this, it's so much easier to follow up with the person and hold them accountable for the deadline and hold them accountable for the project itself. So don't leave the room until everyone's clear about who's going to do it, exactly what's going to be done, and when is the deadline. Great managers forge agreements. They don't just issue commands. The third skill set for developing great communication skills as a manager really doesn't have as much to do with communication as much as it has to do with your willingness to pay attention to the details. Because after you've made an agreement with somebody, it takes a great deal of follow-up in order to make sure that everybody is still on board and tracking with the project. Directing, managing an outcome requires hands-on leadership. So number 3 is to follow up as soon as possible instead of hoping for results. Here's the problem. We managers tell people what to do and then we leave it at that. And then the deadline arrives and we deal with whatever the result is in that moment. It either happened, okay, great, or it didn't happen, okay, what went wrong? And the problem is that we told someone what to do, and then we essentially forgot about it until the deadline arrived. And that's really no way to manage a staff. So number 3 is to follow up and coach throughout the process instead of waiting for the end for the deadline. Now, I'm not advocating for micromanagement where you don't trust anybody to do their jobs and do them well. But there are a few key areas where you as the manager really should keep your hands on the wheel throughout the process. For example, coach the employee what to do when they realize that they can't meet the deadline. Now, we all know that things happen. Most things are unpredictable, and everything that happens can affect whether or not a project can get done. So what is your employee supposed to do if the project is due by the end of day Friday And suddenly on Thursday, they realize, oh man, I can't get this done. Do they know what to do? This is a good opportunity for you to coach them and let them know that, hey, as soon as you realize that you can't get your project done by the deadline, why don't you come to me and let's renegotiate this agreement that we have, and let's talk about the obstacle that's going on. And finally, when the deadline arrives, make sure to hold that employee accountable for their agreement. Great managers follow up on all of the details, and when the deadline arrives, they hold their employees accountable for the agreement that they made. If the agreement was not met, why? Why wasn't it met? What happened? Why wasn't the agreement renegotiated? When you follow up with someone about their agreement, it trains them and teaches them to hold to their agreements in the future. The flip side of that is when you get to the end of the deadline and the employee has met their agreement, follow up with them in that regard as well and let them know, hey, I really appreciate that you kept your agreement. When you praise someone, they'll try to live up to it. Great management is in the details, and some of the most important details are follow-up and coaching. In many cases, your follow-up will determine their performance. So 3 ways that great managers communicate for great results. Emphasize what you want, forge agreements, and follow up. Following these 3 communication guidelines will get you great results as a manager. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.